Hello and welcome to Kingston Now. I'm Jimmy Buff. Believe it or not, it's election season already, and later in the show we'll meet Andrew Champ-Duran, a Kingston blogger and now a candidate for alderman. We'll talk about Lyme disease with Lyme specialist Dr. Stephen Bock, and we'll start with Kate Palmer and Lindsay Funstein of GRASP, the Global and Regional Asperger's Partnership. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
That is quite the acronym.
Yes,
GRASP.
it is.
Before we get into exactly what it is that GRASP does, can you just give me, Kate, a sort of an overview of what Asperger's
Sure.
is? Because a lot of people know autism, but they don't know that those two are related.
Sure. Well, Asperger's is actually, it is an autism spectrum disorder that is characterized by social, communicative, and behavioral difficulties that is akin to high-functioning autism, but without the language delays.
And the spectrum, the phrase the spectrum is because it's so wide and varied?
Yes, it is. Many people they do know what autism is, and they usually see that as some of the more challenged individuals that are actually, they don't have the cognitive or they're actually just, actually, can you help me with that a little bit?
Yeah, Asperger's is, they really are able to go into the world with everyone else and interact, whereas someone with high-functioning autism might have a little bit more trouble with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But they are related in some
They are
shape or
related,
form.
yeah.
We don't know, do we, what it is that causes autism or Asperger's? There's a lot in the world these days about it might be environmental, it might be something. Is there research going on about that?
Definitely. There's definitely research that is going on, and people are, they're trying to figure out what is causing it. But in the meantime, we're here as an organization that is just providing support before until they figure out what is actually going on.
And Kate, tell me about GRASP. It's about a 10-year-old organization, right?
Yes, it is. We actually do provide services and support. As we were discussing before, I'll just add that in that there's a lot of genetic research that's being done. There's a lot of different research and variety of resources that are being done. But what we do is we provide support and services because there are so many ways that we can help teens and adults that don't have the services that many of the other agencies provide. So we help with support groups. We help with programming that for employment services, for different ways that people really need services that other agencies cannot provide in other ways.
And is GRASP sort of a newer concept in the way of dealing with Asperger's, people with Asperger's, as opposed to, you come here, we treat you? This seems more
Right.
like a peer-to-peer.
Exactly. It isn't really a treatment.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually very much a peer-based organization. So we literally originally started as a peer-run support group that started in Manhattan. It was one group, and then went to now we have over 30 across the nation and Canada. So that's how we started. We are also now working into more programs as well. So we are in charge of running teen support groups as well. We are also in charge of running staff support groups and staff trainings in District 75, which is in New York City in the 5 boroughs as well, which helps transition the teens that are in the school districts that have autism and Asperger's into the world outside of school, in addition to training the staff members that support those individuals as well. So we're also working into the Hudson Valley as well to do the same thing that we do in District 75, in addition to the program that we were discussing before with employment services, day-to-day living skills, in addition to just like how to do laundry efficiently, how to do cooking, how to do all of those types of things that people with Asperger's really need help with. Many people that we work with have college educations, can do so many things, but have difficulty with some of those day-to-day skills.
And so you're here now in Hudson Valley in Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's a little Uptown Kingston synergy here.
Yes.
Because Lindsay, last time we saw you on this show, you were working at Yum Yum Noodle Bar, which had just opened, but you have a background in Asperger and autism. And I guess you guys crossed paths at the restaurant. How did that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Well, Kate came in one night, and we started talking about, I don't even remember what we were talking about, maybe autism, but we just got on to the fact that we both worked with the same population of people, except that I work with adolescents and she works with adults. And so from there, I started to attend the support group that's here in the Hudson Valley, and we began speaking about ideas that each of us had that we felt could benefit the community, and from there just became a really great working partnership. So.
And now you're with GRASP.
Yes.
Full time.
Yes.
It's terrific.
Yeah.
What happens locally? Tell me about some of the groups that are happening here in the Kingston area.
Right. Well, this group that we have for adults in the Hudson Valley is a GRASP group as well. We're also going to be starting a teen group this summer, in addition to the ones that we have all over the country. But this one that we have here, it's really wonderful. We have on a basis of between 15 and 20 people that attend regularly, but we have over 80 that are part of the group. It's a really wonderful opportunity for people to come and talk about issues that they can't talk about with anybody else. That people just don't understand, issues that people with Asperger's can really just, everybody understands what's going on. So.
And it's a free group.
Yes. All of our groups are free.
So it seems almost to be modeled on that, the 12-step program of, support from people who have the same issues that you do. Is that
similarly?
Yeah.
Similar, but it's not structured in that way. We're not expecting people to, divulge to their family that they have Asperger's or to their friends, or come out in some type of way. It really is more of just. It's similar in the fact that it's peer supported. That's about the only similarity,
And where are the groups here in the Hudson Valley?
We meet at the Old Dutch Church on the 2nd and 4th Saturdays of every month.
And how long is a meeting, or I guess is it?
It's for about 2 hours. Sometimes we go a little bit over, and then oftentimes we'll have a social event afterwards. We'll go out to the diner, or we'll go over to someone's apartment and just continue talking. So it's a great way for people to connect when they don't really connect with others.
Your offices here in Kingston are in
Yes.
the Franz Rogan House, one of
Yes.
the historic stone houses in uptown Kingston.
Yes.
And I was in it with you. You have these wonderful paintings on the wall
Yes.
done by Asperger's folks.
That's right.
As well as a small library. What's the
Yes.
library for?
Well, the library happens to be books that are all about autism and Asperger's syndrome. So it's a pretty significant library for it's a good resource for everything that you need to know about Asperger's, basically. So I encourage anybody who needs information about autism or Asperger's to contact us and stop by and check it out.
Great,
Absolutely.
terrific. Well, thanks for coming by
Yes,
today.
thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Jimmy.
You're watching Kingston Now. Next, we're going to meet Andrew Champ Duran and talk Kingston city politics and the upcoming election for city council. Stay with us. Welcome back to Kingston Now. The election season is upon us in Kingston and Ulster County, and come November, we'll head to the polls to vote for regional and local candidates, including, perhaps, Andrew Champ Duran. And we'll get to the perhaps in just a moment, Andy. But first, your day job is in the theater department at Bard College?
Yes, it is. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
You bet.
I'm the technical director in Bard College Theater, have been since 1989, ooh, 24 years.
So you've been here a bit.
A little while.
And recently you started a blog called Kingston Barn. What prompted that? And tell me about the name of Kingston Barn. Where does it come from?
Kingston Barn, first I'm a carpenter, but not that kind of carpenter. But Mario Cuomo used to use a quote from Sam Rayburn, a congressman from Texas, who said, "Any jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a real good carpenter to build one." And that has been sort of it's sort of the watchwords that I try to go by. Not literally building a barn, obviously, but building something, making something happen. Not trying to not just knock things down. Obviously, the internet is filled with a lot of noise, a lot of rough talk. Usually it's the same 2-3 dozen people commenting on every site and saying some pretty awful things, some pretty nasty things. People are not standing up behind what they say. A lot of anonymous, and I realize that people feel they have reasons for that. But I wanted a civil discourse. I want to build something. I don't want to kick down the barn. I want to build it. I want to see what the real problems are. I want to have a conversation about that, and a real conversation that might lead to some solutions, to some answers to the problems that that face Kingston and Ulster County and New York and the country at large. But I live here in Kingston, so I called it Kingston Barn.
It's a really a great description of a process that we don't see too much of. There seems to be a lot of kicking down the barn, a lot more of that, and so it's kind of refreshing to hear that someone wants to build one and build one of substance. And in fact, going beyond blogging, you're actually throwing your hat into the political process, into the ring. And you're going to run for alderman in Ward 3.
Right. A lot of a few of my friends and neighbors who live in Ward 3 from all political parties have asked if I would be interested in running. I've been involved in a few things that have been happening in my neighborhood really for the last 7 years or more, and it was a difficult decision because I know it takes a lot of time to be an alderman. The work is long, but my bride said, "We can do this." You know, my beautiful bride Tonya said, "We can do this."
Kingston politics in recent months and years has gotten kind of rough. Are you sure you're up for this?
Well, it's a
I mean,
little.
Here in Kingston, they seem to eat their own.
Well, it's a little different from where I grew up. I grew up in Iowa, and Iowa's a caucus state. In the caucuses, when you elect a president, you go to a room filled with your friends and neighbors and people you know, and you get together in circles or at tables and you talk about your candidates and you send a representative to talk to everybody else. Now, the next day, what are you going to do? If you can't be civil, if you can't talk, if you can't represent what's best for your town, what are you left with? Another knockdown barn. The people in the ward that have actually reached out to me, you know, I'm reaching back, and I want this to be about what's best for not only the ward but for the city of Kingston. So I thought, you know, let me put forth Kingston Barn and see what we can do with that. And I've gotten some good response. And from that, it grew into this. You know, we've been working on other things. We're working on a civic arts project here in town. We're working on the Bard College coming into town. We are working on the high school early college. Dr. Padalino took that, ran with it. He and Dr. Cott from SUNY Ulster have started a high school early college, which should be starting next week. I believe Dr. Padalino said that he wants to be handing out diplomas in 2015.
And of course, he's the superintendent of Kingston City
Yes.
Schools. Yeah. So Andy, elections, as we've seen in recent years here in Kingston, can be decided by 6, 8, 10, 12 votes, individual votes. You're going to have to get out there and really knock on some doors and let people know who you are. You ready for that, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that people see you around. They know you. But they don't know who you are. They don't know what you do. You might find that a lot. Oh, you're the guy from that thing. You know.
Well, good luck with the election. It's June. You've got until September to the primaries, and then till November to the election after that. So get out there and get at them.
Well, thank you very much, Jim.
This is Kingston Now. June is prime time for Lyme disease, and next we'll talk about the issues, physical and other, associated with the malady with Dr. Stephen Bock. You're watching Kingston Now, and we're joined by Dr. Stephen Bock to talk about an important health issue, which is Lyme disease. And this is kind of Lyme season, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
We're in June, and it's the summertime. Though Lyme ticks are around, it seems like more and more, even through the wintertime, which surprises me.
Well, because of the sporadic weather and more warmth and extended season, yeah.
But people are out more when it's warm, and so their exposure to a Lyme-carrying tick is greater.
Yep.
And we are sort of in the epicenter here in the Mid-Hudson Valley, aren't we? There's an inordinate amount of Lyme cases here.
Oh yeah, we're really at one of the epicenters, also in the Midwest and also in California, but it's spreading around the whole country.
So you've been a doctor for a long time. You've told me just before you started rolling that you've seen 9,000 cases of Lyme.
Over about 30 years. I've been treating Lyme for about 30 years, along with the rest of my medical practice.
And your Lyme expertise has obviously grown along with your experience and exposure to the people who suffer from it. But back 30 years ago, when it first started, was it a surprise to people? Did we, what is this thing that's happening?
Well, yeah, I think we were first getting into it years ago when I was seeing people who had chronic fatigue and immune problems and some joint problems, and they'd have a negative test, and you do a workup, and then you'd say, gee, this sounds like Lyme. If it's, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, waddles like a duck, it's probably a duck. And their test would be negative, which happens a lot, and I'd treat them for Lyme, and they'd come back and they'd be 70, 80% better after the first visit. So I started, just thinking more about it.
It's funny because your Lyme expertise, and that's a lot of what you do. I have this assumption that most any doctor you go to, your family doctor, would have that expertise too, but that's not the case, is it?
Well, yeah, no, because I think you have to see a lot of Lyme to be comfortable with it. And the thing is, in medicine, we're so looking at tests, and a lot of times the testing in Lyme is not very sensitive. In other words, there's the two-tier system where you get a Lyme ELISA and a Lyme Western blot. But there's also what they call a reflex. That means some labs just do the ELISA, which is the screening test. And that could be negative 50% of the time. So it's not it's like flipping a coin. So you have to really go by the symptoms. And then a doctor sees someone with the symptoms and then does a test, it's negative, and he says you don't have Lyme. That's a common thing that I get people who come in and say, I had 2 Lyme tests, they were negative. And so what are your symptoms? Well, I got headaches, fatigue, I got joint pains, I got cognitive dysfunction. Well, what did they say you have? Well, I don't know. I said, well, it sounds like Lyme, and then I go and do my stuff. I do additional tests, and then I treat. And so Lyme is the clinical diagnosis, and absence of proof is not proof of absence. It's a good thought that I always have.
Where are we in the treatment of Lyme? Because generally someone gets Lyme, they go in and they get a 2-week course of doxycycline or something like that. Are we moving beyond that in the treatment of the disease?
Well, I don't treat any Lyme disease for less than 6 weeks if it's a documented Lyme. So in other words, if someone has an EM rash, that's a bullseye rash, I won't treat them for less than 6 weeks because the Lyme is so slow growing that antibiotics have a tough time killing it. And I feel if you've only given it for 3 weeks, like a lot of the guidelines say, then that Lyme might be dormant in your system, and 2-3 months later, they'll have a recurrence. At least that's what I see when I see the history of my patients. So and I've got that as my personal way of doing it. And then a lot of times, you'll need more than 6 weeks.
Is that a challenge in terms of acceptable medical guidelines, which say treat it this way, and then you want to go beyond that? Is that a struggle?
No, well, medicine is always a clinical, endeavor. You look at the patient and you listen to the patient and you do what they need. But there are guidelines like infectious disease, IDSA. They say 3 weeks of antibiotics. I'm in a group called ILADS, which has a national guidelines out, which says you give the patient what they need. And it could be 6 weeks, it could be 8 weeks. So we have a different guideline. And we have other, doctors in that group support that. So there is a little bit of a difference on how it's treated. But you can have somebody who gets treated for 3 weeks and it's fine, it doesn't need more. Mm-hmm. So it's not a clear split.
The cases of chronic Lyme that go on longer than that, are you seeing an increase in that?
Yeah, I see predominantly chronic Lyme cases. I see some EM rashes, but not that many because people usually go to their primary for that, and if it's handled, I don't see them, but I see people who have had, real problems.
What are the treatments for people who have long-term and chronic Lyme? What will you do for them?
Well, first I take a complete history and physical, go over every test they've had, what doctors they've seen. Normally I'll have someone who come in who have seen maybe infectious disease, maybe saw their internist, maybe a cardiologist because you can get palpitations, maybe a neurologist, maybe a rheumatologist. So I'll look over that and I'll see what diseases were considered and what was ruled out, and then I'll do my testing, and then I'll make up a course of action, and then I'll usually follow them in 4 to 6 weeks, see how they responded, and see whether there are other co-infections, or also see how their immune system is, how their hormonal system is, and their neurological system. So I do an integrative Lyme treatment. I don't just treat Lyme, I treat the person that has Lyme with whatever they have, be it a diagnosis of fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or autoimmune. Like, I saw a woman who came into my office who had rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, and she had gone to infectious disease, and he said, you can't possibly have Lyme. Well, I diagnosed Lyme, and she was 95% better on the antibiotics. So something like rheumatoid arthritis, even though it's a diagnosis that hangs out there, it can be started by Lyme, and you wouldn't want to have a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis and take all the potent medicines that you need for that without getting treatment for Lyme if it indeed was the cause.
Terrific. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to come and talk about it. Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.
That's it for this week's show. Thanks to Kate Palmer and Lindsay Funstein. To find out more about Asperger's, go to grasp.org. Thanks to Andrew Champduran. To read his Kingston blog and to find out more about his run for City Council, go to kingstonbarn.wordpress.com. And thanks to Dr. Stephen Bock. For more about his work, go to bockmd.com. Remember, all of our previous shows are available on our YouTube channel. You can find that link on our Facebook page. For Kingston Now, I'm Jimmy Buff. We'll see you next.